Alright, here in Civ 7, the format has completely changed. Do you remember my previous videos in Civ 6 where everything was done in a nice short 20-minute video from start to finish, the whole game? Well, Civ 7, as I may have mentioned before, has jumbled things up, completely changed the format, and now it's distributed in 3 ages. So, of course, instead of having one video, we're going to have 3 videos for every playthrough. And of course, we want to start with the big thing that happens in the modern and in the exploration age we're about to have a look at. And that is how you did in the previous age and how that reflects in the points that you get to choose between, and distributed in all the various main criteria of science, culture, economics, and military. And where you want to put them, why you want to put them there, what differences might be made between each playthrough, and so on and so forth. We'll also have a look at perhaps things that we could have done if we didn't, that in an ideal playthrough where there's no setbacks, one would have liked to have taken more opportunity and advantage of, because there are certain things that one should try and consider while in a previous age to make the next age as good as possible. Okay, here we are at the start of the exploration age, and we have chosen to be Shawnee. And the Shawnee are very interesting. They have their own units. The Hosip Kalani is a unique missionary, and they even have a unique infantry unit, and that will be expressed in things like the civic tree. However, of course, we have our traditions that we gained from being Carthage. We don't really have any naval units right now. We get one basic cog for the start of the age, but other than that, not really point having that. So I would say taking these two makes more sense. Another thing I really want to talk about turn 1 is influence. Now that we are in the exploration age, towns are allowed to gain the hub town specialization. Hub towns are amazing. I don't know which ones exactly are amazing, because unfortunately we do not get information here on what settlements this town or any other town is connected to, and we only get information on the cities it's connected to. Have to choose a specialization first, which is back to front. You want this information on how many connections before you make a choice like this. But you know, hopefully with how this game is at the beginning, early infancy of its life, they will eventually like say, hey, you have the opportunity to connect to this many towns. That would be a nice thing, but that's another thing, another topic, another time. Hub towns are awesome. I just don't know if this one specifically will be awesome. It's currently 25. Let's have a look. 30. Not great. Let's have a look here. That's too small. Let's have a look here. That's terrible. Let's have a look here. Nope, that's too early. Let's have a look here. 32, 37, that's also relatively mild. Not great, but whatever. That's terrible. Again, this just shows I wish I could tell how many connections there are already. See, that's +8. That's not bad. That's not bad. And that's another 8. That's, again, not bad. This is still time to grow. That's time to grow. Okay. So this is not the best example of this, but it is important to keep that in mind. I honestly think that influence is incredibly powerful. It's what I like to use. Why isn't this loading up? No? You don't want to load this up? Okay, this is why I use these particular mementos, Shisha's necklace and bifocals, because I think influence is really, really strong. And then, of course, all these city-states throughout the area will be populating various parts of the unoccupied territories that we can make an immediate attempt with 275 plus 54 per turn in suzeraning. And that will give us a ton of benefits, both immediately and across the course of the age. Immediately because they give you a whole bunch of different buffs, whether it's free technologies, whether it's, you know, building adjacency increases, all sorts of cool things like that. Or There are certain civics that care about, like, vassalage, that care about how many city-states you are suzerainty of, plus free culture and gold for every city-state you are suzerain of, things like that. You add that to your government, even more strong. You really want to make sure that you make the most out of influence, and first and foremost, make sure you get those city-states. Alright, as I like to do in most of my games, I beeline piety, and we now have the opportunity to choose our religion. And unlike pantheons, there is one particular choice that I love to make any game I can. And what do I like to choose but icons? Just 2 relics for a first-time conversion of a city-state. There are so many reasons why I love this particular choice. So many. It's not just like the obvious thing, which is like, oh, there's a bunch of city-states, you can take some advantage of that. No, it's not just that. Okay, so city-states, you're already trying to suzerain. So you're already trying to keep alive. Once you get their suzerainty, they are a part of your empire. If anyone wants to disperse it, they have to go to war with you. So you're helping protect the city-states, and you're making sure you have access to them. 2, when you go to distant lands, you will probably find other city-states. You can use them to almost set up like proxy bases throughout the map. That allows you to also use your missionaries to then go and convert them. 3, eventually, when you want those city-states, and this is arguably the big one, you gain the culture benefit for the relics. And then what do you have left? The 3 others: military, insufficient urbans, distant lands that are converted to your religion. Oh, would you look at that? Looks like I can incorporate a city-state to my empire, have an additional city now that was already converted earlier because I used it for the icons. And the synergy goes culture plus 2 relics, incorporate plus 2 points for your military insufficient urbans. So you can combine the 2 together. You get yourself a city-state, you convert the city-state, you get plus 2 on the culture, you get that done. When you're done, you get the insufficient urbans, you incorporate the city-state. I am a big fan of this procedural playthrough, and it's definitely the one I pick every single time. And for this, I kind of like Shrines of the Kami more than, say, in one of the more general ones, like Tithe, simply because unless you're really leaning in heavily on religion, you're already kind of dedicating quite a number of charges and having to look after quite a few places. You're not really going to have necessarily that many more charges to waste on every other territory. Shrines of the Kami allows you to be a little more specific, get you more bang for your buck for doing arguably less work. So, I really like it. I think it's pretty good. Well, of course, one of the main things in the Exploration Age is that there are some other civilizations from the other continent that is in this game that we've been meeting, and we've been meeting most of them already. And now it's our turn to meet Lafayette. And of course, obviously, the capital will be on the other continent. So for neither of us, with any of these distant lands starting civilizations, will our capitals be revealed, which makes choosing the friendly greeting a lot more enticing, because you're not really worried about having it backfire, because, well, they're not going to be anywhere close enough to set an ambush for you. However, depending on the situation in the game, you may even consider to go hostile if you're looking to try and beeline your military legacy path by capturing certain settlements. If you were beaten to the punch on certain distant lands, islands maybe, and you want particular treasure fleet resources, this might be an option. But for in this case, we're just going to go with friendly grading. There's of course certain various options that we have available. I still have been using most, if not all, my current influence, as you do in the early part of the game, of the Exploration Age, befriending city-states. So I'm not interested in spending quite a bit, if not all of my influence on something like that just yet. Alright, 24 turns into the Exploration Age, and much the same with our friendships over here, but we have our first settler that has come across the deep, rough seas, and found their way to the distant lands. Not very distant, but distant enough. And that's the point, because we need these chocolates, we need these tea, and we need these spices in order to make treasure fleets. And of course, the value of treasure fleets is quite important because we need to try and get to that maximum 30 before the end of the age. Now, games like this, ages like this, probably take about 70 to 80 turns. You talk about 4 turns to make a treasure fleet, and for each instance of the multiple that you get, in this case 3, in which case that would be 10 times 4, 40 turns. Now, alone, this is going to take at least 40 turns to make the 10th ship, then a few more turns to sail it all the way back over to here. So, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 turns on top of that, 45 turns, and we're already on turn 24. So when you consider, like, on an online speed game, that, you know, pushing turn 70 is, you know, it happens, but it's dicey with the end game. And of course, who knows, maybe you get a crisis that affects your ability to make treasure fleets for the last 30% of your age. It can be really problematic, especially on online speed, to make sure that you get this particular legacy path fully unlocked. Halfway into the exploration age now, and what I want to show you in this part is sandbagging. As you can see, we have generated an absolute whopping amount of relics, more than enough to finish the culture legacy path. We have 1,000 gold, we have a bunch of cities, Malef, you know, so on, so forth, Slakofa, etc. We can easily get there with our temples, right? However, we aren't. And why is that? Well, we need to try and extract every single turn we can, because we're already at 47% of the age, and we don't necessarily have everything else working yet. Do your best, depending on what it is, it can be difficult, to hold back from generating the points earlier on so that you give yourself as much leeway room to get everything done in time. Yay, Alascorial! Now, it may not be the Antiquity Age anymore, but that doesn't mean we stop making wonders. No. There are several reasons to make more wonders, especially this one, because it gives you help on settlement limit, which is something you're going to inevitably run into at some point if you're ascending your empire and making more territories your own. But in this case, I am endeavoring to make as many different cities have a wonder instead of as many wonders in my capital. And of course, the reason why, although we don't have the points yet, is this right here. The plus 10% culture in cities with at least one wonder. If we can get another cultural, at least in the beginning of the modern age we will, attribute point, we can take real good advantage of the amount of culture we can generate from doing that. Currently, we're only at 266 culture, which is less than our science. So we really want that culture where we can get it. And now we can dot around these wonders all our districts, which we'll have plenty more of in these remaining cities that we build. Late game now in the exploration age, and crisis is upon us. The death ship. A ship is seen tacking to and fro outside the harbor where the winds will take it. The crew has died or abandoned it, but left expensive cargo from distant lands and rats. Rats, I tell you. Before the harbor master can think to scuttle the ship, opportunistic looters from the shore have already carried off many things, some of which they did not intend. And you get a choice here between the plague being divine punishment or the plague being divine mercy. And depending on that will affect what particular crisis policy cards you get to slot into your government. In the final modern age, you will get different legacy boons to choose from in the list that you get to put your allocated points from the previous age into. So it may be viable to go for this, but when our priority is to, get the maximum legacy path points for this age, and we don't want to be impeded by our economic situation. As you can see, I've already put some in now because it really doesn't matter until you hit the first threshold. I feel like we should go for divine mercy. And with this will come a couple of choices. Oh, well, one choice at the moment. District buildings and improvements in settlements that follow your religion are not damaged by minor outbreaks. And this is really useful and really helpful because you will notice we are more than capable of keeping everything steady ship until we get those necessary treasure fleet resources in for the final few turns and get the most out of this age. It's nice to see you back, and speaking of nice, let's look at our religion. And you know, I have seen quite a few criticisms over religion in this game. I definitely think it's possible, as I've shown here, to have a really successful game with religion. And of course, you know, getting that boost to our yields here for accelerating the rest of your game plan. Of course, you know, it allows us to alleviate our problems in our own territories with the crises that just loomed. It also allows us to use things like religious orders for 15% culture and happiness to our own cities. And if desired, rationalism as well, giving you plus 15% culture, gold, science, and happiness, kind of like the belief that we have to each of our cities is kind of nuts. So definitely something to watch out for. And if you're struggling with religion, always be aware that it's not every game that religion's going to work for you. This is one of those very volatile, turbulent aspects of the game, whereby some games, the AI will just prevent you really completely from really ascending a religion, and you just have to pull back and focus on other things. And in some games, you get the opportunity to really let loose and make sure you take dominance. So as we amass a greater band of treasure fleets, you can see here, 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 and here, and also on the other side, which is a very nice thing to have an empire that sprawls between each side of the continent you start on, so that you can have access to places like this, as well as places like that. However, the future is upon us. That's right, we have made it to the future tech, because we have done literally everything, and that is something I want to talk about as well. In regards to the sandbagging calibration of an online speed game and how many turns you get opportunity to make the most of and get a mastery across the legacy paths in every single one of them, perfect victory kind of thing, you really want to be careful of how much science you're making, as well as culture. And they have, I must say, in the recent patch, which came, I think, after this game, addressed how much science it requires for you to ascend through the modern tree, but this is exploration age, so I don't know if it's been affected. It's very much like a car in regards to the settlement limit. Like, you want to be overclocking to begin with. You want to be boosting and getting the most out of your mileage in the early game. Make sure you get that cartography early on so you can get and explore a little place, because you need to know which places to settle for those treasure fleets and so on and so forth. But then you kind of want to slow down. You want to kind of like slow everything down as you're kind of like heading end game. Because if you don't, you will probably accelerate your game too quickly. Simply because things like Future Tech and Future Civic will add age progress. Now notice it says plus 10. It does not specify when it should that is a standard speed ratio. AKA, it's not going to ascend it by 10. Being on online speed, it will still ascend it, I believe, by 5 or so. Let's pass the turn and have a look what happens. You see how it went from 81 to 87? No, then we'll go to 91. It's not actually 10. It simply is that that's the standard speed value, and you need to kind of like equate it to what you're on. So I'm on online speed, so that's around about half. So it gave us 5 plus the 1 for the turn. So it went from 81, you know, plus the 5 with the Future Tech, plus the 1 for the turn, plus 6 in total, to 87. So as you can see, our exploration age in this game has only taken 57 turns, and we've reached 100%. I can fortunately let you guys know that we did manage to do all the legacy paths. We got the culture, we got the economic, we got the science, and, well, okay, well, there's 2 points missing on military, and you might be wondering what earth's going to happen to that. Well, I've got to show you something for that. So we have a couple of city-states, and they are 1 turn away with our diplomacy, with our influence, from becoming ours. And they also are our religion. And unfortunately, the way this game works is those two will conclude and give us our last 2 points before it considers the game over, and immediately we'll be able to see that in our post-game review when we press the end of the turn and have our maximum 3 points in each criteria. There you go. It went to ours, and immediately the expiration age comes to an end. Something to think about if you are really pushing it and getting to the last percent, that if you need that extra little bit of military points accumulation, then a last minute suzerain can be good enough. And we will also look at the post-game stats for that. And there's a lovely picture of the Shawnee and their very beautiful scenery. All right, 3, 3, 3, and 3. We have maximum points. We have acquired all these options to look at in the next video. We have our rankings here. We acquired just enough displayed relics. We did probably have more, but I didn't bother with that. We have over 10 more than we initially needed in treasure fleets, which is remarkable given just how late we were to the party. But we were able to add more settlements, as you saw there, to be able to add our number. And then, of course, the non-sufficient Urbis, we have actually 16 points out of 12. So much more, probably because they accounted for 2 each, maybe. And then, of course, we had plenty of special district quarter tiles that had specialists in them for the Enlightenment bonus. If you enjoyed this, please give a follow and maybe, a comment below. Let me know what you think of the video. I really hope to see you again, and I'll see you next time.